Hello, I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society. If you like our videos, subscribe to our link posted below or hit the like button to see more videos on local historical content. Today, we're going to talk just a little bit about the Pennsylvania Monument on the Gettysburg battlefield. Obviously, the Pennsylvania Monument is the largest monument on the entire battlefield of Gettysburg. It was placed here in 1910. It was dedicated on September 27th, 1910. And I think the monument is a very interesting one. And there's a really interesting concept that they used when they designed the monument. And that's the fact that they decided to put the names of the 34,000 Pennsylvanians that fought at the battle or in the campaign on the monument. And this was a massive undertaking. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. But the monument itself is a series of triumphal arches with a dome on top of them. On top of the monument is the goddess of winged victory, which of course you might know as Nike. And it's actually based on a statue of Nike that is on display in the Louvre in Paris. Now, we're just going to walk around the monument. We'll talk a little bit about different things associated with the monument and its construction. And of course, tell you about some of the things that make it really unique. When the monument was dedicated in 1910, the cost was about $150,000. About 3 years later, they added 8 statues to the monument and increased the cost of the monument by about $30,000. So, of course, here we have a statue of Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States at the time of the battle, who actually gave the Gettysburg Address. And over here, we have the governor of Pennsylvania at the time of the battle, Andrew Curtin. The monument, besides having 8 statues on it, it has the names of the corps and division commanders from Pennsylvania around the top outside edge, and it has inside of the columns, it has the names, I believe there's like 26 of them, of the brigade commanders associated with Pennsylvania on the monument. It also has 89 iron tablets, some around the base, some inside. 86 of those are the names of the men that fought in the battle, divided by regiment and company. According to a count that was done prior to the dedication of the monument, there are 34,530 names on the plaques around the base of the monument. I saw that someone tried to do a count of them in the late 1930s, and they came up with 3,000 or 34,526. And there today, the total would be different also. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So you might ask yourself, how is it that the state of Pennsylvania was able to come up with a list of all the men from the state that fought in the Battle of Gettysburg? Well, of course, we had lists of the various regiments that were involved in the battle, and it's easy to identify which Pennsylvania units were here. Also, every 60 days in the Union Army, they conducted a muster in, where they gathered all the soldiers and they marked them present or absent for duty in every regiment. And it just so happens that 2-month muster roll was due on June 30th, 1863. And sure enough, there is a list of all soldiers present for duty on June 30th in these rolls. So the state adjutant of Pennsylvania got the muster rolls, checked with the War Department to make sure they were accurate, and they put the list of those names on the monument. Now, after they put the names on, they realized there were some mistakes. Like, just because you were listed as present for duty on June 30th, you might not actually be present with the regiment. Or maybe you were there on June 30th, but were not there on July 2nd during the fighting. And there's all kinds of problems with the muster rolls. So over the years, there were several times when the War Department and the National Park Service has actually removed names from the monument. Men who were listed on the rolls, but clearly were not here during the battle. And you can see the names have been carefully removed from the monument with a chisel. Um, Over here, you might notice that men's names were added to the monument. These were men that, for some reason, were not listed as being present on the June 30th muster roll, but were found to have actually joined the unit before the battle and participated in the fighting, and their names have been added to the monument. So it's fascinating, and I don't know if anyone's done a thorough count of the names on the monument at present, but again, it's somewhere around 34,530. Um, what's interesting is there is a book that was published in 1914 that actually has pictures of all the plaques on this monument. And of course, our own William H. Tipton, battlefield photographer, is responsible for the images of the plaques in this book. So you can actually look at the plaques and see them before names were added and names were taken off of the monument, which I get a big kick out of. And for users of the iPhone, you might know that a local Gettysburg person has created an app for your phone called Pocket Gettysburg. And in the app, there's an alphabetical list of the names on this monument, and it's pretty easy to search. If you're from Pennsylvania and you come to Gettysburg and you want to know if your grandmother's maiden name, if that particular family name appears somewhere on the monument, you can just put it into the search field and you can find it. And every day we have people that come here that look for names on the monument. Often I take people on battlefield tours and they ask about the monument. If I know they're from Pennsylvania ahead of time, without them knowing it, I will look at my phone, check their last name on the list. And then I do this a lot. Without even telling them, we'll walk out of the car and over to the monument, and I'll just stroll over and point to their last name on the monument. And they have no idea how I knew there was going to be at that location. But that's all right. They don't need to know that. But, you know, regiments are organized in parts of the state or by county or sometimes even by town. And you can go around the Pennsylvania Monument and you can see the towns in Pennsylvania and the names of the people from that area. So, for instance, if you look at the 30th Infantry, which is also, of course, the 1st Pennsylvania Reserves, you can look down and see that Company K was organized in Gettysburg of men from Adams County. And of course, it's exciting for us because in our new museum, we are actually going to have the fife of George Gibbs on display in the museum. And we're going to have the drum that was carried by Charles Gilbert. And both of those names you can see on the monument. I should mention that there is a star on the Pennsylvania Monument next to the names of the guys who were killed in the battle. And let's see if he's on there. There is one Adams Countyan that was killed in the fighting of the wheat field. He's actually mortally wounded, died a little later. William McGrew of Cumberland Township. As some of these guys passed their families' farms on their way to the battlefield, one of the guys in unit, when the Pennsylvania Reserves made the charge off Little Round Top, his family's farm is just like a half a mile away from the area where they fought. So there's some really good stories associated with that. If you're from York County, you might check out some of the names here in 30th Pennsylvania Reserves. Kindig, Heiser, Bowman. I think somewhere we have a Rudder. These are really good, Hanover type names on the monument. So it's always valuable to look at your town. The 69th Pennsylvania are Irish from Philadelphia, and they were in the angle on July 3rd when Pickett's division overran their position. So if you want to see a lot of stars on one of the plaques, you want to stop at this one. So this unit has a bunch of indications of men killed and wounded, or killed in the battle. And of course, there's also lots of men wounded. I wanted to mention that for every man killed, we estimate that there are 4 wounded. And that's a pretty good rule when you study the losses, strengths and losses of the units in the battle. So imagine 5 times the number of stars that you see here on this particular plaque to get an idea of the total casualties. And it's one of the more horrific in the fighting. The 88th Pennsylvania Infantry is from Philadelphia and Berks County, PA. And if you look at the plaque here, Company B of the 88th from Berks County, uh, the second lieutenant is Samuel Boone, and his grandfather's brother was Daniel Boone. Samuel Boone was involved in the first day's fighting and captured in the town of Gettysburg as he was retreating back to Cemetery Hill and spent time in Libby Prison. And years ago, I was fortunate enough to have his descendants on a battlefield tour. The 99th Pennsylvania is just a little bit farther up, is from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And you see a lot of Pennsylvania German names on this plaque. And Company A, there's a guy named Charles Boschnott. And years ago, I had his grandson on a tour of the battlefield. He was in his 90s at that time. But if you want to see Lancaster County names, here's the 99th Pennsylvania. As well, the 96th Pennsylvania is the Lebanon County unit. So here's Lebanon County names. So not only are the regiments pretty much from the same area, and all the companies are from the same town, but oftentimes there are brothers and uncles and fathers and sons in the same units. And you see names duplicated under each other all across the plaques on the Pennsylvania Monument. And of course, one of the more noticeable sets of brothers is in Company B of the 142nd Pennsylvania. I believe they're from the town of Mount Pleasant. And of course, people from Western Pennsylvania can add in the comments if I say something that's not correct. I think they're in the corner of Westmoreland County, but here on the plaque, there are 3 men: Enos Kramer, Samuel Kramer, and A.G. Kramer, which I believe is Adam Kramer, maybe Amos. Again, you can put in the comments if you know. But all 3 men have stars next to their name. These 3 brothers were killed side by side by side in the first day's battle. The 149th Pennsylvania suffered heavily in the battle, as did the 151st. If you look at the stars on the 151st Pennsylvania, you might notice that I believe they are the Pennsylvania unit that had the most men killed or wounded in the battle. But the 149th suffered heavy casualties on July 1st. And Company C was from Lebanon County, and I believe they're from Myersville. And you can see Jerome Myers is actually one of the lieutenants here. And oftentimes I give tours of the battlefield to school groups. And I remember one time I had a group of 6th graders from Myersville and Lebanon County, and I knew they were from there. We got the bus off, and I gathered all the kids around the monument, and I pointed to the company from their town. And Henry Brem, who's the color bearer, was buried in a cemetery across from where their school is, and they were really excited about that. They had learned about him before they came here. And the kids flipped out because their teacher was Mrs. Batdorf. How many times are you going to see that name, Batdorf, on the monument? But it's just incredible the amount of casualties taken by some of these units. The 153rd Pennsylvania is from Easton, Northampton County in eastern Pennsylvania. And this unit is definitely a Pennsylvania German regiment. You can see here's 4 guys with the same last name, Dotterer. And some of my favorite Pennsylvania German names are on this monument, like Werkheiser. I like Schnabel. I don't know if you have ever thought about your favorite Pennsylvania German name, Rudolf Schmetzel. That's a good one. Or Amandus Jans. Of course, one of the most interesting facets of the monument for visitors is the fact that there's a stairway inside one of the columns of the monument behind Lincoln's head. And you can actually take a very narrow circular stairway to the top of the Pennsylvania Monument to have this magnificent view of the battlefield. I'd like to mention that through its history, there have been many times when the tower or the stairway has been closed. As a matter of fact, when I was a youngster, I would say from the 70s up until the 90s, the stairway was closed and it was locked and we had no access to it. I was never on top of the Pennsylvania Monument until after I became a tour guide in the 1990s. But now it's been open pretty regularly for a number of years. They actually spent a lot of money repairing the monument in the 1990s. And you get a spectacular view of the battlefield from the top. And, they designed it so you could learn about the area around the monument. There is a north arrow here on the ground showing you which direction north is. And here's a plaque on the southern side of the monument that tells you that Baltimore, Maryland is 54 miles away. Of course, in the town of Gettysburg, which is a few more miles north of us, there's a marker that says Baltimore's 52 miles away. So I get that depends upon the angle that the crow flies, I'd imagine. It says Tawnytown, Maryland is 14 miles away, and it says that Washington, D.C. is 69 miles. And of course, from here, I always like to call the attention to the visitors to the fact that we're in the Union fishhook, that the Union line of battle ran from Big and Little Round Top along Cemetery Ridge, up to Cemetery Hill, and over to Culp's Hill. And you can see the entirety of the Union fishhook from this perspective, which makes it very powerful and, of course, easier to understand the battle once you're up here. If you look out from the north side of the Pennsylvania Monument from the observatory, you have an excellent view of the fields of Pickett's Charge. You can actually look up along the line and see the massive number of monuments that are along this ridge. And it boggles the mind to think that each one of these monuments represents about 300 men in the Battle of Gettysburg. And when you study the battle, you come to realize that Robert E. Lee decided to attack the Union center on July 3rd because it would be the weak point in the line. Both ends of the line were strong, the center must be weak. And maybe the center was weak on the evening of July 2nd when part of Richard Anderson's division attacked this position. But on July 3rd, it is not the weak point on the line. Units have returned, other units were moved in, and the Union center is the strongest position on the entire battlefield for the Northern Army on July 3rd. So Robert E. Lee will cross a mile of open fields under artillery fire to get to the spot where he's going to have to try to break through this massive northern concentration of troops. And, I think this is one of the best views of the field itself to get a better understanding of this from.